Today we're going to talk about the transfer of learning, but not just taking one thing that you've learned and putting it into the exact context, but how to really transform learning and how we can facilitate that as teachers. I mean, why do we teach? Why do we teach a second language? We teach it so that our students can go out in the world and use it. When we teach them about asking for directions, we hope that they can navigate their way in New York or LA. When we teach them how to order in a restaurant, we hope they can get the right plate of food in front of them. But beyond these basic contexts, we hope that our students can take what they learn and transform it into any situation that they find themselves in. The content today comes from Diane Larsen-Freeman's 2013 article, Transfer of Learning Transformed. In this article, she talks about different types of learning transfer, some cognitive views of transfer, then how individuals interact with their context, and then she dives into this idea of transformation of learning rather than just transferring learning.
Incredible.
To start, let's talk about some of the types of transfer, some theories on how it works. The first is near and far transfer. Near transfer would be when we teach a student how to order in a restaurant, and then they go and do exactly that. Far transfer might be when we teach them to order in a restaurant, but they use that knowledge to navigate a city, to help them in business, to help them in an interaction with a friend. It's stretching that knowledge to a different situation. We can also look at the transfer of learning as a metaphor. The low road and the high road. The low road would be taking what we've learned and exactly transferring it over the way we have learned it. The high road would be taking that information and trying to make connections, how we can use it in different situations. Positive and negative transfer of learning has more to do with instruction and how we're teaching a concept in the classroom. Are we teaching concepts for their correct usage, or are we maybe overgeneralizing some of the concepts and students are taking that and applying it in areas where it doesn't belong? And of course, our transfer of learning is always influenced by cross-linguistic influences, the way that our L1 affects the way that we transfer our L2.
You just mind your P's and Q's, Buster, and remember who you're dealing with.
So we have all of these ideas on language and transfer of learning, but why is it that sometimes it doesn't stick? It's what we call inert knowledge. Let's talk a bit about cognitive processing, and beyond that, other reasons why language might not transfer the way we think. One reason why a student may not be able to transfer their learning to a real context could be, as much as we hate to admit it, inadequate learning. This is something that we need to address. Are we teaching our students in a way that they will be prepared to take what we're teaching and use it in a real scenario?
What way?
Why students may not be able to transfer language is the type of processing that they are asked to use in the classroom. For example, if they're always using procedural knowledge, they may not be able to transfer that to production and comprehension. We need to teach students deeper semantic processing so that they're learning to process language in the classroom the same way that they're going to need to process language in the real world.
Anyone raised or lowered? Raised tariffs.
Why a learner might struggle to transfer their language knowledge is the level of abstraction that is taught in the classroom. Is everything rote memorization?
I'll go.
Or just put into a specific pattern? Or is it taught in a way that students can then conceptualize what the task is and use it in varied situations? Of course, we need to talk about metacognition. When a student makes a schemata of everything that they have learned, how one thing connects to another and how they can use that in any different context. Students' emotions can greatly influence transfer, and a student's motivation really impacts their learning quality, their transfer attempts, their persistence, and really their cognitive engagement. Transfer is going to be much more likely when a learner sees a practical use for what they're learning and how they can use it. In fact, one study found that the motivation to transfer knowledge from an English class to other contexts is very rare because it's hard to foster that kind of transfer in a classroom setting. One more thing that we need to consider in this inert knowledge issue, or the difficulty in transfer of learning, is that each learner is an individual living in their own circumstances, in their own contexts. And these play together to influence how well language knowledge is transferred. This is not taken into account in the traditional perspectives on transfer of learning. That's why we need a different way to look at it. That's why Larsen-Freeman has proposed that we consider it a transformation of learning.
It's true.
Larsen-Freeman outlines some ideas for iteration and adaptation, and also some strategies that we can use as teachers in the classroom to help this transformation take place. When we as teachers show the learners how to adapt language to any situation, that transfer of learning is going to become much more natural when they're in the real world in different contexts and situations.
I said it before and I'll say it again. Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
We should absolutely use authenticity in our teaching. Activities should simulate authentic communication so that students can understand that they can use what they're learning in meaningful conversations and processing. We can also teach them that they can choose how language is used. We don't want them to go out and use what we've taught them verbatim. We want them to go out and choose how they are going to use language in their everyday situations. Also, as teachers, it's our role to give the students prompts to help them realize that they can use different concepts, different grammar, different vocabulary in different circumstances, and also to frame tasks in a way that they'll be enabled and empowered to use the language that they've learned.
It's cool. No, it's gonna be good.
So in summary, we have talked about some of the theories behind a transfer of learning and why sometimes we see inert knowledge. We've also talked about cognitive and non-cognitive reasons why it might be difficult to transfer learning to the real world, to real application. We've talked about how context and learner differences can influence the way that learners are able to transfer their knowledge to different situations. And finally, we learned how we as teachers can instruct in a way that can help our students transform their learning so that they can understand how what we teach can then be used in the real world in different circumstances, regardless of the circumstance. We can do that by adapting and using iterations in our teaching.
What are we gonna do?
The question isn't what are we going to do, the question is what aren't we going to do?
If you found this video interesting or useful, go ahead and comment below. Let me know what you learned or what you've done to help transform the learning of your students. And go ahead and subscribe if you want to learn more about instructed second language acquisition.
You're still here? It's over.